won't go into it yet. Let me see. Do you remember what episode it was last time we did this?
Episode of what exactly?
This podcast. I'm looking now, but if you know, that would help as well.
Hang on.
15. We're on episode 15, so this is episode 16. You are listening to Alternating with Eric, episode 16. All right, Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Still being in lockdown, but they're figuring that we might be going back to work very soon. But even then, that's, I don't know. That's still a question that still hangs in the air. So, in reality, I might still be stuck at home for another couple of weeks. But I'll see what happens. Otherwise, I've just kind of been at home playing games, watching all sorts of stuff, and including reading that recommendation you gave me, Promised Neverland. I have to say that was a very dark read, like a very dark one. Like reading through the first few chapters, I'm like, oh, this looks really nice. This looks really, quite sweet, quite, family friendly. And then I get up to the, just moments after, because apparently the place, what the setting of it is some kids are at an orphanage that's run by a single, a single person called, which they call Mama. And essentially, there's a whole bunch of kids who've grown up there, and kind of ate, played, and studied, I guess, and did tests there. And essentially, you don't exactly see anything too bad with the whole situation until you see one of the kids actually get taken away for an adoption, and it turns out that kid was basically killed, and so it leads on to the kids finding out the truth behind the whole orphanage and the whole world they're in. It gets really dark from there, but it is an enjoyable read, and that's something I definitely have been reading through. So I think I'm almost up to the latest chapter. But essentially, that's been what's taken up most of my time reading, because it was a good read. It was a great read. Other than that, I've just kind of gone back to some regular, I guess like slice of life comedy type animes. One of which was called Five Tobano. Hang on, let me see the name again.
House of Five Leaves or something?
Yeah, that's the one. It's that one where this guy accidentally, there's this one guy who's trying to tutor these five sisters into passing, and essentially, I've kind of watched the first episode of that and thought, this is silly as hell, but why not? I threw myself into it. But yeah, it was a little bit enjoyable. It was good to look at something that wasn't so deep, profound, and dark. Otherwise, I've just been playing through a whole bunch of games of mine. Since I've just recently got myself a desk, I've got a stable ground to really just play around and have a bit of fun. And that's what I've pretty much been doing. What about you, Connor?
So I finished the first season of Golden Kamuy. That wasn't too bad. I tried watching the dub of Golden Kamuy. I didn't really enjoy it that much, to be honest. I think it's a really hard show to actually dub. It's just a hard show to dub, and the voices are so good in the Japanese. And it's not only Japanese, but you've got like the Ainu traditional language as well that you've got to somehow fit in there. So I was impressed that they managed to like get some of the English speakers to speak that version of Japanese, but it was I thought some of the casting, there's a couple good choices, but a couple just choices where I was like, that doesn't quite work, that doesn't quite fit. But other than that, let me see. I haven't really binge watched too much new stuff. I guess I went back to some what you'd call like comfort food sort of shows. I went back and watched one episode of Bebop, and that was fun to go back and watch an episode of that. It's the one with wait, have you seen Bebop, Eric, or am I going to be spoiling? Okay,
I've got a special edition DVD with
me. That's good
to look at. So yes, I'm so insulted.
Yeah, I watched the episode where there's a environmentalist group, and there's like a kidnapping thing and stuff. One. That's a fun one.
I kind of disliked it because of how it was just a little over the top, to be honest.
I thought it was fun.
In terms of how activist groups are portrayed, that was a little over the top.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
It was funny. It was definitely fun and funny.
So, I watched that, and I rewatched an episode of Welcome to the NHK. I hadn't seen that in so long. It's a little difficult to watch that show now because it's about a character stuck inside of his house, like he's, doesn't want to leave his house. And I'm in... we're not quite at level 2 yet, so I'm still technically kind of stuck inside my house. And he gets... I watched the episode where he's getting addicted to an MMO, online RPG. And there's some pretty funny moments in that. And then there's also a pyramid scheme episode that's pretty funny. My only issue I had with rewatching these is the animation is really crap in a couple places, but it was fun to go back.
As far as I remember, because I watched one episode of Welcome to the NHK, and as far as I remember, the animation didn't seem that bad for the time, because when did it come out again? It
came out 2000s, but no, it is really bad in a couple places. Like, characters go really noticeably off model in like a couple places.
I guess it can be excused considering they use quite of their budget to, create hallucinations for the guy.
Yeah.
Like, what is it, in the first episode, he was hallucinating some desserts or puddings, having faces and talking to him, telling him, quick, there's an organization that's now, taking over, and they're making you do all this. Wow.
I think maybe they didn't get enough money or something, or it is Gonzo, which isn't the best anime studio. And there's just like, I felt sorry actually, because I was watching it in the dub, and I felt sorry for some of the actors because they have to like match these scenes where the like faces are going completely off, and like they look almost like a blur or something in a couple. I was like, oh man, that must have been hard to try and keep serious and act to, and like, oh, my character's like on model, and then all of a sudden like is a weird blob looking thing.
No, yeah, that definitely was weird. I can't even remember anything beyond the second episode.
It's
mostly
funny.
The first one stuck with me because of just how out of this world it was. It was like, I wasn't expecting this guy to start suddenly hallucinating that his favorite dessert has faces now, and is telling him all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, the problem is the anime, which is fine. It does have an issue where it doesn't show him doing any drugs or anything, which is what happens in the manga, and I think some of the novels. He's like doing he's smoking weed and doing a bunch of other things like that, which makes a lot more sense with some of his behavior stuff, in terms of him believing in conspiracy theories and things like that. The one thing that, the animation a little off in a couple places, but I thought they were still quite funny episodes. The dub is really good. Pretty sure the sub's not too bad either, but generally just like a fun show to go back to. And I've been watching. This is an anime related, but it's Asian material and stuff related, so I guess I can count it in here. I've been Asian media related. I've been watching lots of Chow Yun-fat movies. I watched Project Gutenberg, which is a counterfeiting movie. That wasn't too bad. It was a little longer than it should have been, but it wasn't too bad. And then I watched a movie called Prison on Fire, which was fucking amazing. Chinese prison movie. And I watched the first half of it, and I almost couldn't get into it because I was watching it and I was thinking of Riccio, because it's the only like other Hong Kong prison movie I've seen. So I was almost kind of laughing a little bit at just the environment, even though it is like a serious prison movie.
I'm kind of looking at this, and I'm kind of looking at a little bit of it. It's got Chow Yun-fat in it?
Yeah, Chow Yun-fat. Oh, Chow Yun-fat. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. Pretty sure the first part is Chow. Yeah.
Nah, but, I might actually give it a go considering he's in it.
It's a good movie.
I've seen a few of his things.
It's... Yeah,
he's pretty good.
He's a good actor. He's a really good actor. There's a really good movie. You've got it, and you should watch it. Called Hong Kong 1941.
I think I watched it a while back, but I'll have to rewatch it.
He's amazing in that movie.
Yeah.
He's really good, and in this movie he's good too, because the movie
younger in the Hong Kong 1945.
Yeah, he's younger in that, I think.
Yeah, he's younger in that one, isn't he?
And this one is he's a little bit older, but not by much. He's I think in his 20s or 30s in this.
Okay.
But in this movie, it starts off at maybe a 3 or a 4. You're like, oh, okay, it's kind of interesting, and there's some trouble and stuff, and there's a bit of there's one scene with a death, and things get a little brutal, but it really it goes from being a little bit tame and a little bit not too intense, but there's some heated moments, to all of a sudden it's a 5 and then it's a 10 by the end of the movie. There's just a scene where it's just intense, and there's a really intense moment with Chow Yun-fat where you see his character as this jokingly kind of just calm guy, and by the end of the movie you just see this completely different rough side of him that just goes you just go holy shit.
Well, if they're going for the factor of prison changes people, they might have done pretty well then with that one.
Yeah, no, it's less of prison changes people and more we find information about him, but you almost don't believe it. But then you see what he's actually you see a side of him that you didn't think was there at the end of the movie, and you're like, oh shit, And prison does bring out some of the worst sometimes and the best in people. But it was just you should watch it just so I can have someone else to talk to about it with. I'll
definitely give it a watch, especially if it's Chow Yun-fat.
Yeah.
He's a good actor, and I have enjoyed his other work. So I'll definitely give that give it a look.
He's an interesting actor because I haven't seen all his stuff. I've seen a couple things of his. I would say his best, my favorite movies of his, he did some great stuff with John Woo, obviously, with A Better Tomorrow and things like that, but I think not enough people talk about how good his work is with director Ringo Lam. He's done Prison on Fire and City on Fire, which is what inspired Reservoir Dogs. And then you've got just what's the movie? He's got a cop movie, another cop movie that he did with him. And then he's got Full Contact, which is just like an American-style action movie, but made in Hong Kong. That's really good. Like, just a solid collaboration between those two guys, and I don't think enough people talk about it. So I'm sort of going. I was happy to watch Prison on Fire because I sort of got to finish the sort of I don't know if you'd call it trilogy or the movies that he's done with him, which are just great. But yeah, I've been doing that. But what games have you been playing, Eric? You said you've been playing some games.
Oh yeah, heaps of games. Been kind of looking back over at some of the other games I had in my on my computer, because as I have Steam and I'm stuck at home and there's always a sale on, I've been playing I've still continued playing a bit of a game called Frostpunk, which is a city builder survival type strategy game, which I really enjoyed. And well, I mean, first time playing I screwed up. Second time round I knew what I was doing, so things were a bit easier, and I could progress through the story, further into the story. There's another game I'm playing. This is a type of crime detective game called Unheard. So essentially, what the object of this game is, you have to try and figure out the crimes and who did what, but your only clues are listening to people's conversations. So you don't have any physical evidence to work with. You can't see what the characters are seeing. You don't know everything. And what you have to do is kind of navigate around a sort of top-down view of a map with a whole bunch of people speaking different conversations. And there's basically get a full recording of what happens just before the crime is committed. And you have to piece together who says what, and essentially who committed the crime in the end. And so far, I've gone through, I'm still going through the tutorial, since I kind of, I don't know. I kind of like to jump in between things here and there. So what I'm up to is just kind of trying to figure out who essentially planted a bomb inside of a police station and blew it up. And so you kind of have to be careful about this, because, it's kind of like you don't actually know who did what exactly, and you have to really follow the conversations along and see how how people interact with each other to figure out what's actually happened. So it's not an overly difficult game, but it is quite a bit of fun. And the third game I've been mostly playing is Counter-Strike, because everybody knows Counter-Strike.
Oh, the classic.
Yeah, Global Offensive, since I just found out that it's free on Steam. So I gave that a go. And yeah, it's a bit of fun. Although, one downside is I got into a game, and there's this one guy, and he kept playing a lot of American rock classics. I couldn't exactly remember which ones they were, but they apparently started playing every time he got killed, which was very annoying and very distracting. But otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much been my games that I've been playing. Which I've been enjoying playing, because now that I have a new desk, I can play through them as much as I want. Yeah, pretty much that's been my cool little game list to play.
So let's get into the we didn't do an episode this week. I thought it was an episode, but it ended up being a special, or basically a movie. It was like an hour and 30 minutes or something. Yeah. I thought it was about 88 minutes or less than that, but it was like 1:30 or something. So first thing I wanted to address, I recommended this movie to Eric, thinking it was a TV episode, and thought, we can just watch that on the, because I'd seen this once before somewhere, and I thought, we can just watch this on, we can just go to one of the usual websites, go to Lupin Season 2 and, watch the episode. But then I remembered it's a little bit newer, and then after talking with Eric on the phone, And Eric going, "Oh no, that's a movie or special, isn't it, Connor?" And then later on, having to look it up and find that we found out that one, it's probably one of the hardest movies to find. It didn't actually get a dub or anything, so I don't know if it got an American. I think it's finally got an American release, or it got an American release a little while ago by Discotheque. But it's a bit of a hard movie to find. I was surprised to find out, and it was even taken down like on one of the streams that I had it on. So when I called Eric again, thinking I was going to have to recommend him something else and that we wouldn't be able to do this movie. But Eric thankfully found a website to watch it, and yeah, we watched this really hard movie to find.
Yeah, it was it was definitely a lot harder to find, considering it might have been in one of those free in one of those servers where you can find free movies. But obviously, it's not like it'll be impossible to find. There's always one free movie site that's going to have it. So I'm glad to have found the one movie site that I could. And I guess for the purpose of maybe letting other people watch it, we're not going to name it, and we're going to let people find it. So go right ahead, give it a go.
I think you can watch it through Crunchyroll. I think there are legal means you can watch this movie through Crunchyroll. And I think maybe
up and paying for it
through Amazon.
I don't think some people actually want to do that.
Yeah, if they want to, we'll give them that option. If they don't, there was another website, but honestly, I kind of wish we almost did pay for it, because we did watch kind of a choppy version of this movie. It wasn't too bad like after the first half, but the first half of the movie, it was like a bit laggy, a bit choppy, and I thought my internet connection was off, but it was actually just the footage or something was a bit.
Yeah,
it was a bit of a bad version of the film.
Or maybe it was just because the way it was made.
I don't think so. It didn't seem intentional,
But I mean, in any case, it was definitely a good movie to watch. It was a lot of fun, and it definitely stuck to Lupin as a whole, and introduced the character of Rasputin in this.
So, wait, before we get to anything else, are we going to pronounce it Lupin or Lupin? Because I've
been pronouncing it as Lupin the whole time.
Really? Because I think it's Lupin. I'm not an expert in French, but I think it's Lupin. Because Arsène, I can't even do the first name. Arsène Lupin, or the guy he's based on. It's a French name, so I would assume it's Lupin, not Lupin or Lupin.
I'll pronounce it as Lupin.
Lupin.
So I wouldn't mind. I don't mind really either way. He's still either way.
I just figured we'd figure out
Yeah. That's all good.
So this movie, I wanted to pick something that was going to be in line with a theme I wanted to do, which was tricksters and like magic and that sort of thing. In fact, before we did this movie, I asked Eric, because we talked about some Russian stuff on Bloody Monday, I said, Eric, why don't you... I like Rasputin a little bit. I find him an interesting character. Can you go out and find a Rasputin manga or an anime that we can review? And I even did some Google searching, and there wasn't actually as much stuff as I thought.
No, that's kind of the that's been kind of the thing. There is some anime and manga authors do include Russia as a theme in some places. The most obvious being Darker Than Black, and even our last episode's review of Bloody Monday. Those there includes like that, but it's including Russia as a much more modernistic, much more Cold War era type power that still kind of continues to try and find a way to maintain its superiority in some way, as it's apparently being portrayed in some ways. But in terms of the more specific trickster archetype, including Rasputin. There's like maybe, including the movie we've reviewed, there's like 3 sources that I liked looking through. So one of the sources I found was a manga called, let me just have a double check of the name. This is Yukoku no Rasputin. And basically, and what was is that, and my head's gone a bit blank about the 3rd source. But essentially, yeah, this is the manga. Oh, the 3rd source was Rasputin portrayed in the Drifters anime and manga series.
He's also in Blood Sea, I think, as well, but he has such a minor role on that. I figured that became kind of the issue. Having to look through and research what I could to find Rasputin, because he is Rasputin is a historically interesting figure, you know, someone who had the influence of an entire royal family and controlled a country that was, a third of the world, and was one of the most important factors in, the First World War. And it was interesting to see that nothing much was done on it, especially with the country in question being Russia, having some conflict around the time Rasputin lived, with conflict with Japan around the time it lived. So I thought, they would have been interested to include that factor in. But we found what we could. The Yuko no Rasputin manga, it was definitely a short read. It's only 5 chapters, but you actually read it?
Yeah, I've read it.
Oh, okay.
It was an interesting. It was definitely an interesting read, considering it has it maybe has a little bit of a reference point to the old historical Rasputin, but mostly focuses on the main character and how he's portrayed in comparison to Rasputin. Whereas the movie Lupin III, From Siberia with Love, that does show a Rasputin's grandson.
Yeah, we'll get into the plot in a sec. Yeah. I wanted to ask this. I wanted to talk about this. I thought it was interesting that there wasn't actually that much stuff on him, because there are 2 really interesting ways you can portray Rasputin. You can portray him as a mystical, magical wizard type figure, which is how I think the series Drifters likes to portray him. Yeah. Or you can kind of portray him as like a creepy scam artist sort of guy, which is how he is sometimes portrayed in some of the movies, the live action ones, and how in some anime series, I think a little bit maybe in this we could say they maybe went a bit more of the creepy scammer route than the mystical, although there's a little bit of both, I think, in this movie. But one interesting thing I wanted to touch on that Eric brought up. So he said From Siberia with Love. The title of this movie originally was From Russia with Love. And obviously when this got brought over to the US and England, there's a very famous James Bond movie that everybody probably knows. And they had to change the title to make it From Siberia with Love, to obviously avoid the copyright. So I definitely figured that out. I was thinking, well, why are there 2 names? And I remembered From Russia with Love. Doesn't that sound like something similar to another movie? Yep. And I looked it up and was like, that explains a lot. So right before we get into the plot, I wanted to get into one thing from the production side of this that's interesting. So this was the last. There were a couple Lupin specials that were directed by a guy named Osamu Dezaki, who you guys might know from the Blackjack OVAs of the 90s, along with the Blackjack movie, and probably most famous for Ashton Joe and Rose of Versailles. And he has a very particular style. He likes using freeze frames a lot, with like this sort of portrait freeze frame sort of thing.
Yeah,
called.
there's definitely been
Yeah.
quite a bit of that in this movie,
He,
especially to,
mm,
in particular scenes. It isn't repeated once; it's repeated 3 times for just one scene, at least.
yeah. Yeah, it's a little overused here. I don't think it's used as well as it is in some of his other shows, where it's used to emphasize usually one big moment, usually at the end of the episode, like a big cliffhanger thing.
Yeah.
His technique's been used in other anime. Dragon Ball Z actually used it a couple times. So he really likes doing that. He likes doing a lot of tricks of lighting and shot point of view. He's just a really interesting director, and he's done a couple Lupin movies, and this was his last Lupin directed movie. And as far as directing goes, this is not my favorite of his works in terms of directing. I've seen, it's not obviously going to be as good as Castle of I'm not even Kageyoshi. I'm not even going to be able to pronounce it. It's not as good as the one that's obviously directed by Miyazaki, because there is a very famous Lupin movie directed by Miyazaki that everybody knows, and that's obviously got a bit of a better direction, and it's a little bit more and close of some of the look of the show. The show had a very popular 77 TV show, especially in its season 2, that really influenced and had a lot of big names on it, like Miyazaki and Hayao Miyazaki and a bunch of other big name people. And so this movie wasn't directed by some of those people, but it's got a lot of the same voice cast from the TV show, which is good, but in some ways some of the actors sounded a little bit older, but we'll get into that when we get into some of the pros and cons. But Eric, why don't you tell us about the plot of From Russia with Love, or From Siberia with Love, or whatever we're going to call it?
Well, it's basically the usual Lupin scheme of his, and he finds out after going into the New York Museum that or rather he's had this idea already previously, that there's some hidden gold from the previous Tsar's family that has been hidden away, and he's now trying to find it. So you do get a bit of a historical moment in the beginning, showing introducing the whole focal point of the movie. You've got the Tsar family. You've got a bit of the history of how their demise towards the end of the war, and the story revolving around them going to America, or escaping to America with the help of one of their one of their supporters, to try and basically live out a life and escape from it. And they carried with them the 500 tons of gold that they had. Yeah, and that is a lot of gold. Ridiculous amounts of. Apparently, in the movie, or I guess at the time of the movie's making, the estimated amount they put into the movie was, I think, in the billions. A couple of billion or so. It might have gone up or down depending on the current, 2020.
So wait. Is this a real gold thing? Like, is there a real Romanov gold?
There's definitely treasures of the royal family, but as far as I can remember, they would not have gotten over. So the portrayal of the Romanovs escaping to America, it's not exactly the most popular portrayal of what happens, and it might even be a more fantastical version, because a popular opinion is that the entire Romanov family died in Russia after the I believe October Revolution. So essentially, the October Revolution, led by Lenin and his his posse, to storm the gates and just kind of bring down the whole royal family. Of course, antagonists against the royal family, had taken the royal family out. There is some historical significance here. The royal family was actually taken away from, what was it, St. Petersburg or Moscow? One of those two. I can't remember exactly. And taken to a far more remote location, where all but the youngest daughter, Anastasia, were shot and killed. So that part in some way was the most popular and the closest to the truth type of scenario for what happened to the Romanov family. So the portrayal here of them escaping to America might have been one of those more fantastical portrayals. But the daughter Anastasia escaping, that is portrayed a lot. It is used quite a bit in some media. The escaped missing princess, and trying to find out what happened to her. And there has been some searches for her. Some people had figured they came close when they figured there a woman in a mental asylum might have been the princess, as she kept replying that she's the princess. But no, that was that fact was dissuaded. Or some say no, she never survived, she is actually dead. Or the fact that no one actually knows what happened to her. But in this movie portrayal, the entire Romanov family managed to escape with the gold that they had into America. But really, to say that they escaped without much gold would be next to impossible, considering that how would you be able to take 500 tons of gold across the Atlantic, without anyone knowing? That's... I'm sorry. As great as fantastical as that story might be, it is a little ridiculous. Essentially, I think by the if the family wanted to escape, they would have had to at least given up something like their gold to do so, because if you're trying to escape from your own country, and making sure they don't murder you, then the last thing you want to bring with you is 500 tons of gold. So yeah, but obviously some truth to that is Russia did hold a vast amount of wealth and riches, but it was mostly fixated to the royal family. So the royal family held that power and that wealth, but that power waned and fell as Russia's as Russia's involvement in World War I and the war against Japan had resulted in multiple defeats and created. Created a massive gap and massive, hatred towards the royal family. Didn't really help with Rasputin involved, but to answer your question, I don't believe there would have been that much gold, especially if it was transported. But I believe if there was, it would have been secretly taken by the Bolsheviks who had taken over and distributed for as wealth amongst the people and as wealth to try and
can you tell me who are the Bolsheviks before you continue?
The Bolsheviks were the early Soviet Union party. They were the group created by Lenin to basically as a group that opposed They were the group that opposed the royal family, and not just really the royal family, but the whole state of Russia as a whole. So Lenin, came up and said, "Look, I know all of you you're not happy with what's going on. I know a way we can fix this." So they were they were a group inspired also by the works of Marx, Karl Marx, who brought about his who had that idea of socialism, communism. Give all to the people, have equal wealth and equal power amongst all, so that there's a possibility of less and less fighting, I guess, or less and less control to the higher powers, which. I guess in some way might work to an extent, but it's a really hard concept to grasp, especially when it all falls back to a far more hierarchical state, as we've seen with Soviet Union. but essentially, yeah, that's pretty much who the Bolsheviks were.
So could you explain to me the historical context that Rasputin was involved with this family, and what happened to him, his death and that sort of thing?
Oh, well, Raspin is definitely a fun character. Personally, the first time I knew about him was watching the Disney-ish movie Anastasia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. So that was the first time I ever knew about him before I even opened up a history books. And in that, Rasputin was portrayed as essentially as an evil wizard who had come in. The whole scene almost plays out like the like a Sleeping Beauty scene. You've got the evil antagonist coming up to the family as they were celebrating, and essentially, something. I think the royal family essentially insults Rasputin, and he basically uses his magical powers to curse the family and tell them, okay, so bad things are going to happen to you. Have fun. In the historical context, though, Rasputin he was a priest. Okay, he was an Orthodox priest. Might be a little surprising by a lot of people, but that's pretty much what it is. He was a very influential figure. He was very popular to everyone, and he was also a spiritual healer. So. And a holy man, and as good of rumors there are about him, there's also bad ones. And when he entered into the royal courts around the early 1900s, he quickly became friends and compatriot to the royal family. The way he did this as well was to be a healer for the son of the royal family, who was suffering from hemophilia, from what I can see. Obviously, Rasputin got close to not just members of the royal court and the family, but also to the queen. So that became an unpopular opinion that Rasputin had somehow, controlled, used some power to control the royal family and, move them around like his own personal puppets. Even some people said, he might even be sleeping with most of the women. There is some before his introduction into the royal family. Those rumors of him sleeping around with female attendants wasn't really proven. But considering he went into the royal court, there might have been some legitimacy to these rumors because, as secretive as the royal family might be, some things don't stay hidden too long. And I believe, his affairs with the females of the royal court might have been known as well. But in terms of his essentially, he was seen as this spiritual leader and just someone who dealt in the occult, but there isn't a complete proof of this. He was a really influential figure and a really well-known man in these plots.
Why and how was he killed, Eric?
Well, he was killed. Around the time the royal family was basically kicked out. As for why he was killed, because of his influence of the royal family and the fact that he, had this kind of hold over them. The Russian elites, not really the court elites of the royal family, but more the middle class elites, the more militaristic, more political and social high order of people. They really were against him, because of how much control he had in the country just from being this close to the royal family. So at one point, members of the military, I believe, members of military or nobles or one of those things. It's rather hard to tell who exactly was involved. They essentially gathered him to a room together to essentially try and assassinate him. First by feeding him biscuits with cyanide in it, then giving him drinks which were also poisoned, then attempting to shoot him, which also didn't work. And actually, I've got the list here of what they actually tried to do with him. So after they tried to poison him with cookies, tried to poison him with drinks, shot him 3 times, he had leapt up from when they bound him and tried to attack his conspirators. And so let's see, then he tried to flee and he was shot again. Then he fell onto, near a river, and they basically wrapped him up and threw him in it. And after that, he basically just drowned in the cold river. Hang on. He was, his body was found later on, and he was, what the autopsy said is that there was no severe trauma. The gunshots were there present. He had other injuries, and essentially, although there's all this popular opinion of how he died, including poisoned, shot, and maybe even beaten, there's apparently also been no evidence that he was poisoned from the autopsy. For the most part, it looks like his injuries either were previously before he fell in, or after he fell into the river. But the most prominent injuries would have been the bullet wounds. I'm a little bit
skeptical of the cyanide cookies.
Well, no, that is as I said, his death was reimagined and made to be far more fantastical than it was. Like even some there's some popular opinion that even after he was shot, before he was thrown into the river, he was still alive. Still tried to fight, even after they shot him, and kept shooting him, kept trying to poison him, kept trying to beat him. He was still alive. So that's his death was made more fantastical, but not because to make him as a sort of martyr, but to kind of hit home the fact that he was some kind of evil wizard or evil occult specialist that essentially, creating a sort of boogeyman for the
a Baba Yaga type figure.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And this it worked in some way, as I've mentioned previously. The Disney movie Anastasia portrayed that.
So
by turning him into this.
Is that why when we sort of see a brief summary of what Eric said history wise at the start of the movie? Is that why Is that why they call him the most hated man in Russia? In the movie.
In some ways there is. His influence over the royal family made it so that, whatever he asks of the royal family, they're going to do it. That's how much influence he has. And because at the time of Russia's many defeats against Japan and in the World War, this kind of created a sort of discontent with the royal family, who were overseeing, Tsar Nicholas II, who was the Emperor of Russia at the time, was overseeing the assaults in both the Western and Eastern Front. So the fact that these losses all were associated with him, and because Tsar Nicholas was also seen as influenced by Rasputin, that's kind of how people saw it. Oh, our emperor is so bad at this. And he's also being, influenced by this mystic. This is rather strange, and we don't like it. So the discontent, the all this sort of bad feeling, all kind of accumulated and sort of made people hate not just the royal family but Rasputin himself.
So, what I wanted to ask, what I wanted to say, Eric sort of mentioned it before. So we get this sort of plot in the library, them reading about this, and then Lupin finding out about the treasure. He gets his gang together, they go to the heist, and we have this whole heist plot, and then we have Rasputin and sort of his team and some other people and the Italian mob getting involved, and it sort of goes on for a bit more. And then what Eric mentioned is Rasputin in this is not the actual Rasputin, but a distant relative of his who was, I believe, a grandson or a son or something.
The grandson.
That's from Rasputin and a prostitute.
Yeah. That part I said about Rasputin sleeping with a whole lot of women. They apparently took from that and thinking, essentially, right, that's interesting. But I guess in terms of historical significance, Rasputin apparently did have a wife and a child and mistress. Him being that close to the royal family.
He had his side bitch and his main squeeze.
He had a lot of him some sort of goodwill to have something like that, which obviously isn't that bad, but
so
essentially.
We also have we might put a spoiler just here just to spoil this. There is also a lady that Lupin quite likes that's hanging out with Fujiko, that we find out they're sort of conspiring. They're working together to sort of trick Lupin and get all this gold off of him. And we find out that this girl is, I can't remember her name. She's got an American name.
Judy,
yes.
Her name was Judy, yeah.
We find out that Judy is actually a distant relative of the Romanov family and doesn't want any of her gold going to anyone.
She's the grandchild of Anastasia.
Who
what a coincidence!
Who Eric has
a lot of grandchildren here involved. This is the thing. This is the thing that I cracked up at once I found out. You got Rasputin, as his name is apparently spelled in the movie, the grandson of Rasputin, having to try and find the the gold that the royal family had, and also Judy, the grandchild of Anastasia. And it is a bit of a ridiculous setting to have, but
connects
if there
things
has
up.
been any sort of it does connect. It does connect a few things up.
So.
And, it was a little bit enjoyable to see that connection, but not what followed after, obviously.
So my two questions for you. One I've been wanting to ask since we've been doing this. Is it pronounced Rasputin? Is that the proper way of pronouncing it, or is it pronounced differently in Russian?
But it is pretty much pronounced as it's it sounds as it's spelled kind of thing. So if you want to say it in a much more deeper voice, like it's a Rasputin in a sort of Russian way, then you can, which I can do, and it does sound far more fun. So
because
Rasputin.
Obviously we watched this in the Japanese dub. There wasn't an English dub for this, this was in the Japanese. They kept on calling him, as Eric mentioned, Rasputin. Because tin is not really something they say in Japanese. So Rasputin, I think they got Judy right. They didn't, that's not a hard name. But and I think they got Anastasia right. They didn't. It wasn't like Anastasia Rue or something like that.
It wasn't. I think it was a bit from what I could hear of them trying to pronounce it. The way they pronounce Anastasia was a bit rough. Not exactly wrong, but I guess it was something they still had difficulty in trying to say. But I mean, other things like references, like American references and movie references like Dirty Harry, which was in there, was pretty good.
There's a lot of cheesy jokes and movie reference jokes in there, which sort of, I guess, fit the theme of Lupin. The other question I wanted to ask you, Eric, is what did you think of the general look of this relative of Rasputin? Did he look to you like how Rasputin did look? Or?
His the way he looked was pretty much as cartoonish as it was, a carbon copy of what Rasputin would look like. You have it's not like Rasputin is so old that there isn't a proper photo of him. You do have proper
No,
photos
there's
of
a
him.
couple
So
photos of him.
the yeah, so looking at the photo of Rasputin, way back when, and looking at his ancestor, looking at his grandchild, there is a relation. They look the same. They could almost dress the same. They've got the same kind of antics, the same buggy eyes. Because one of the things that Rasputin was known for in terms of his facial features was his eyes. They kind of bugged out, almost made him look insane.
Yeah.
So that's something that the movie did quite well. So they made him look quite nutty, quite insane, and if we're not even including his antics, the way he speaks, the way he moves, then just by looking at him, looking at how he looks, you can see he's not just a carbon copy of Rasputin. He's also this this kind of evil type, this trickster evil archetype that may have at one point influenced important members of society to try and control things from the background.
So,
but yeah,
So to get back to Lupin, what you were you familiar? You said you're a little bit familiar with some of the Lupin series. Which ones were you familiar with before watching this movie?
Well, I can't say that I was familiar with the older Lupin series. So I don't believe I watched anything from the 70s. Nothing from the 80s. I think I was looking more into the 90s or even the 2000s versions. I think, is it? Was there still stuff coming out in the 2000s?
Oh, so are you talking about the recent TV series, the one that was in Italy, or are you talking about the movies from 2000 and stuff? Because
I think the movies. I think I've mostly been watched some of the previous movies.
Okay.
Of Lupin's. I haven't. Yeah, like I said, I haven't actually watched any of the older episodes. So my familiarity. With
so there's Lupin. So actually, a best way to do this. Has Lupin? What jacket has Lupin worn in the stuff you've seen? It's been blue, red. What color?
Red
okay.
jacket.
So you've seen mostly red jacket. No blue jacket. Not this new TV show that's been. Okay.
I've never seen him in a blue jacket. Does he? Okay. Which one?
Yeah. So there's Lupin. I think it's part 4 or part 5. He's got a blue jacket in that's sort of set in Italy, and there's been some more stuff of that. That's less episodic. That's more of a continuous thing. There's obviously been these 2000 movies that I think Eric, the ones he's talking about, like Secret of Momo and things like that. Although the Secret of Momo might be getting that wrong. But there's a couple. Alcatraz might be the one Eric might have seen. There's a couple different 2000 ones. I'm familiar with the 70s show. I've seen a little bit of the original Green Jacket first season of Lupin. Which I don't think was too bad. I've seen 2 episodes of the Pink Lupin, and I've also watched obviously this movie at one point, and the new show, The Blue Jacket, and I've also watched the Woman Called Fujiko Mine OVAs, which are pretty good. My only complaint with that is
I definitely haven't watched that much of the stuff that included Fujiko.
That's a good one to go to if you're looking for something. My only criticism with that is the dub for that is actually really good, but I don't like really any of the voices they've done for Lupin over the years, except for maybe Bob Bergen's okay and Tony Oliver's okay, but most of the time I just watch them in Japanese. With the exception of Michelle Ruff as Fujiko Mine and some of the other actors, usually the dub's kind of here there, because the cast for Lupin has kept the same voice actor-wise, for a long time, including in this movie. And the other question I'll ask you now, who's your favourite member of the Lupin gang?
Kind of has to be Lupin himself, really.
Okay.
Because he's always at the forefront of every single sort of heist. He's always got that plan. He always has a backup, and even when things go wrong, he improvises on it. But the best thing really about him is that while other characters kind of portray, regardless of what situation they're in, they always seem to things could go wrong for them as and as a little in as little type as possible. But with Lupin, especially with going back to this movie, there is a situation where it looked like the villain would win, and none of the other characters knew what to do. But Lupin just kind of stepped up and was like, "Okay, dokie, I'm gonna save this," and then boom, he saves it all. He saves the day,
Yeah.
And so that's what I like about him is like when all other plans fail, Lupin just kind of steps in and fixes what he can. So that's kind of why he's my favorite character. I definitely also like his sidekick, who seems to be the closest thing to a voice of reason, I guess.
Yeah. He's
Am I correct in
probably
saying he's the closest thing to a voice of reason for Lupin?
He's probably my favourite character. I like him and I like Fujiko. I like them a lot. They're both interesting, and they're interesting when you team them up, and they're interesting when you separate them. They're both really interesting characters that I think are great. And you talked about Lupin in this, and I think it would be interesting to see your thoughts on if you saw some other Lupin, because he can drastically change depending on what jacket he's wearing. And Red Jacket, the one that we watched, he's a bit more comedic, a bit more lighthearted. Green Jacket Lupin, with the exception of a couple materials, he's usually a bit more darker. He's a bit more of an asshole. And then Blue Jacket is a little bit similar to Red Jacket, like it's a little bit more lighthearted. Pink Jacket, I didn't really get enough of a grip on it to really sort of get what sort of character he was. I just know it wasn't really my favourite version of that show. But yeah, we watched the Red Jacket one, which is a little bit more light-hearted, and there's some great moments. And why don't we get into the pros and cons of this? So I wanted to talk about the main thing that I liked, which was the bank heist. I thought it was very well planned out and used a lot of the members of the group very well. The only thing I was kind of sad not to see is Ishikawa, who's he's kind of put to the side in this. He doesn't do a lot. He's the swordsman of the group. He doesn't get to do a lot in this, and that was a bit disappointing. But generally, everybody in the bank heist gets to do something cool. Jigen sort of gets to be the guy with the gun in the bank heist. He just sort of keeps an eye on the hostages, and Lupin
he's the criminal who negotiates with the police.
Yeah,
or he buys time while Lupin goes with this crazy plan.
Yeah, he's the brawn of the group,
which I actually liked. Because being what I believe to be the voice, what I think, because I do still think he's the voice of reason. He seems to take this role quite well. So seeing him kind of take the bank manager up against a window, it's kind of like telling him, hey, shut up and don't say anything. Or when the bank manager threatens him, he's like, that's hilarious. That's funny. That's real funny. Yeah, I really liked his role in that whole heist. It's really good.
I thought every character within that heist got used pretty well. Fujiko uses her sex appeal to get some truck drivers to help them drive out the gold. Lupin is, in there helping move it and digging a hole and doing all this other work. And Jigen's like the bodyguard, and Judy's just there to sort of help out. I didn't mind her role, but I kind of felt like they could have put Ishikawa in there in some sort of role. I guess he's maybe a spy or an inside man. checking on Rasputin maybe, because it seemed like there was a little bit of that connection there with Lupin and him within the story. But yeah, I thought the bank heist was just really cool, really interesting to watch.
I mean, as ridiculous as it might be, it was pretty cool to see that whole thing planned out, and how each character definitely executed their own part in the plan.
Yeah.
I guess one thing what is it?
What's a pro for you? What's one thing you like?
One thing I'm again. One thing I'm kind of against is the whole ridiculousness of the whole situation, especially with, as cool as it was to see Lupin find the basement that leads down to the treasures, the fact that half the room has to move just to allow that was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that I thought, okay, Lupin, if you can take 500 tons of gold easy peasy out of there, why would you ignore the rest of the other treasures, which are probably weighing far less?
Yeah.
Especially, what was it, Picasso's painting or something?
Yeah. He did say he was tempted to come down and steal them all.
Yeah. But I guess when you got 500 tons of gold in the next room, everything else just kind of like, whatever. 500 tons of gold, that's more than enough.
So one thing,
but even after that, when he kind of, I guess, loses the gold, he still has a backup plan for that, which I thought was pretty impressive. Even though you could kind of see that Fujiko and or Judy could have betrayed them. You do realize that Lupin did have a backup plan for that, and it was fun to see what that involved, as simple as it was. But yeah, he does kind of portray well as a trickster type character. And pretty much good fit for the Fiend.
I liked some of the. There was some pretty crazy moments of collateral damage with these Italian mob guys chasing after Lupin, and they're just in this giant truck, and they're just driving down the highway, just crashing and destroying every car and every person on the highway. I was just like, holy shit!
Well, I almost forgot about that. What the hell was that?
And then did they like have some? Did they have some money left over for the animation budget or something? Because that was just like, oh my god! And even a moment that was kind of cheesy and funny, but at the same time made me go, why don't these exist? Or that should be a thing. The fact that one of them wears sunglasses, well, both of them wear sunglasses, and they're bulletproof sunglasses.
Oh no!
Which felt like a censoring thing at first.
How is it that someone can shoot, bullets and shoot the bullets and just kind of manage to get them in the eyes without actually killing them is ridiculous. It's like, out of all the places you could have shot him at, you shot him directly in the eyes, which are protected by bulletproof glasses. Okay. I don't know. That was
it's a pretty funny censor. It felt like really bad censorship.
It really did. It really did.
Like, oh my god, they shot me. Good thing I was shot in the robot arm. But at the same time, Eric, wouldn't you want a pair of bulletproof sunglasses?
Probably not.
If you're I always thought why aren't these in more movies? Because they're kind of like in disguise. I would want a bulletproof hat and sunglasses, so I could wear like a big hat and my sunglasses, and someone shoots at my head, and maybe I wear like a bulletproof scarf as well, like over my face. So but then at that point you might as well just wear a frickin' helmet. Oh.
Well, I think I would have preferred a what is it? I definitely would have preferred to, what is it? If I was the one trying to dodge the shots, I definitely would have poked my head out the window and seeing a guy with a gun out ready to shoot you, would have just jumped back in.
What are some other cons you had with the movie, Eric?
Some of the other cons. I guess.
What did you think of the weird finger thing that Rasputin does? Where he shoved his finger into people's mouth and stuff.
I don't really have much. Really have much against that. Considering. Oh, you mean his weird fetish at
his weird,
his fingers in people's mouths?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is definitely weird. I guess one thing I have against it is the fact that if they're going to portray some similarity between Rasputin and his grandson, that is the kind of thing that's, against really what he might have been doing. It could be like I guess if they're trying to make it that Rasputin was a weirdo, then spot on. But that finger thing is kind of, I don't know. And plus, there was the moment after Rasputin found out who Judy really was, and kind of that interaction between them. I didn't really like that because that. If that's his grandson, that is pretty far away from what the original Rasputin was like, because Rasputin
he was a bit of a womanizer, though, don't we know that? He was a bit of a trickster and a womanizer.
But the thing is, there's no real account of fact of him having forced himself onto a woman. He's always been the kind of he was portrayed as a charismatic and very well-liked figure, so he could attract people. He knew how to manipulate events so that people would be like, "Oh, you're such a lovely person, so nice and helpful," blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So he didn't really need to use any force to get himself into bed with a woman. He would just talk to her for a bit and bang, they're having sex the next minute. So that's one of the things that that's one of the cons a few of the cons I disliked about the if Rasputin, being the grandson of Rasputin, was a comparison to the original man, there are some things that kind of out of hand with a historical figure.
So,
but yeah, that's pretty much my con.
What is his finger thing though at all like a Russian martial, like a fighting technique or anything? I was thinking, like, what historical context is that? Weird, like shoving your finger in someone's mouth or ear, like.
One of the things he does is poke both his fingers through the eyes of one of the members of the mafia. So that's not exactly. That's kind of a that is essentially a very dirty fighting move. So Rasputin in the movie appears to be a bit of a dirty fighter.
Yeah.
So it is in some way another thing that's against the historical figure, because the Rasputin in the in history wasn't too much of a fighter. He was a monk. There's some parts in his life being a monk that he took seriously,
and not
so
a shallow
to kind
monk.
of say he was a fighter was kind of a bit. It was a bit strange, really, to see that. It's like, I thought, okay, so is Rasputin decided to take up fighting to defend himself? Because if so, okay, fine. But that's kind of like a faraway fact from the from Rasputin in the history. Because I don't remember Rasputin having any sort of fighting techniques like that.
I was kind of disappointed they didn't give him like a Russian.
You want to have a villain. I mean, at the time, Russians knew how to fight hand-to-hand combat, but to say that Rasputin did it, no, I wouldn't imagine him. I wouldn't imagine Rasputin to do something even nowadays like that.
So
I think he'd just continue his monkhood.
So as much as we've talked and loved some of the Rasputin stuff, I actually had a problem with it because the finger thing was weird, and it did feel like they set him up well, but then they had the whole bank heist plot, and I just completely forgot about Rasputin for like almost 20 minutes. And then they brought him back, and I'm like, there's another plot line, and I was like, oh, okay. And it took a while to like pick up again,
Yeah, you kind of have to remember that he's still involved in this, and he's still partially a central figure to this whole plot. But once you of course, that does only come up once you realize that the glasses guys, Big and something, I can't remember what the other guy's name is. Those two, once you remember those two are basically Rasputin's conspirators to try and steal the gold, then that's when you remember that he exists. But obviously, with those two having the most ridiculous action scene, tied to their name, I kind of thought to myself, how does Rasputin think he can achieve anything when these two somehow caused, what was it, a bridge to collapse and blow up? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, the other interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, the interesting animation thing that I noticed is how fucking long Rasputin's beard was. It was unrealistically long. It was almost down to his feet, and I think it changed in shots.
No, that would have been, that kind of style would have been quite common.
Yeah, but I don't think his beard was actually down to his feet.
No, but as close as you can get it to be.
Yeah. It was a long beard, but I thought it was kind of like, Alucard's hair in Hellsing, where it'll be really short in one shot, and then all of a sudden it's super long, and it's wait, what happened? And it's the same sort of thing with Rasputin's beard, it's down to his legs in some shots, and then it's sort of near his stomach in other shots. It was, yeah.
But I think Alucard from Hellsing can be forgiven, considering he's a vampire who can control any part of his body to do whatever
so you think that's a magical ability?
If he wants his hair to be longer than it usually is, he'll do it.
So he doesn't need haircuts. He can just shorten his own hair if he needs to.
Essentially, yes.
So yeah, that was my only. And then I've brought up before, the voice actors are all from the 70s. And they're all, well, actually, what's funny is now the only voice actor from the 70s who's still doing Lupin stuff is the voice of Jigen. He's been Jigen since the 70s and is still doing Jigen. The guy who played Lupin in the version we watched, Yasuo Yamada, he's no longer Lupin. He died a couple years ago, I think. And the lady who voices Fujiko is no longer Fujiko. And the voice of Ishikawa, who we don't get to hear that much in this, but he's in this, Makio Inoue, probably one of the only other actors from the Lupin franchise who's actually been in a lot of other stuff that isn't just Lupin. He's most famous for being the voice of Captain Harlock. So he's a good actor, but we don't get to see much of him in this. But I thought it was kind of sad because Yasuo Yamada, he only maybe did a couple other movies after this, and he's not bad, but you can tell he's a lot older now than when he was doing the 70s show, where you can clearly hear he's a lot younger and his voice suits the character a little bit more. This one, you can tell he's quite old now and, starting to age. So that would be my only sort of other con that for this movie.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the voice acting and the cons, I didn't really see too much of a con with it. It all sounded pretty decent, and I can't remember who the voice. I think I might have looked it up, but I can't remember who the voice actor for Rasputin was. But he did a pretty good job, to be honest. In portraying an archetype trickster character like that, especially with how evil he is. By that it's like a voice. Essentially, it's almost like a extremely deep and wheezy voice. There's no, but of course there's no kind of accent to it. No deep Russian accent like this. It's kind of, it's still a Japanese accent, but I mean, I guess when not a lot of people know or remember what Rasputin sounded like, or if there's even or if anyone's really at that time bothered to look at the sources for how he sounded. I guess that's the best you can go with. There's been two actors who have played him. There's been a couple, but there's been two main English actors who have portrayed him, and that has been Alan Rickman and Christopher Lee.
And I think both of the movies are very different. I think the Alan Rickman one's a little bit more realistic and a little bit more true to more of his sort of trickster vibe and a bit of a nice guy, while the Christopher Lee one I think is a little bit more of a horror movie because it's made by Hammer Films and it's got Christopher Lee. So let's get to final thoughts, Eric. What are your final thoughts on this movie?
It's okay. I wouldn't say it's I personally wouldn't think it's a brilliant Lupin movie. I think a few of the ones I've seen previously were a lot better. But this one, I guess, looking back into it, coming back to Lupin as a whole, I would still like to see more of Lupin. I did kind of miss him, but in terms of this movie, it was definitely okay. It was definitely okay. But one thing I liked is parts of the portrayal of Rasputin as the grandson of Rasputin was pretty spot on, and even the even the integration of some of the Russian history was pretty well done. I think it was, and even even the theories about the well, I guess not the theories, but the historical significance of understanding what happened to the Romanov family was a really good, interesting inclusion into the whole movie as well. Because even to this day, people are still trying to figure out what the hell happened to the Romanov family. And if they did go to America with 500 tons of gold, that's brilliant. But if they all died, back in Russia, that's that's still a sad ending and a sad story to it. But the fact that they've the fact that the directors included this kind of part of the part of history into their movie, especially from a foreign country, I think that was a good thing to to see and look at.
So I as far as Lupin stuff goes, I don't think this is the best Lupin thing. There are episodes of the TV show I like a little bit more. There's some of the new series has been pretty good. I liked some of the Rasputin stuff you've brought up. I thought the red coat was, I kind of wish it was black and a bit more like a monk's coat, but that's a really nitpicky thing. And yeah, I've brought up my complaints of like the beard being ridiculously long in a couple frames, the weird finger thing. Other than those, like, I really enjoyed the heist moment. I thought some of the character designs were pretty cool, like Judy's and it's the general face and stuff of Rasputin looked pretty good. And I got to see all the classic characters come back, and they did play a little bit of the Lupin III theme song. They did kind of a version of it, and that wasn't too bad. But yeah, I'd give this like a I don't know, like a 6.7 or something. Like, it wasn't amazing, but it did the job. It wasn't too bad. The other con, I guess, would be the fact that it's you can legally find it if you can watch this for. Well, I don't know if we can actually watch it in Crunchyroll in New Zealand, but I think in America you can maybe watch this on Crunchyroll in America. So. Yeah, it has some ways you can watch it, but it wasn't an easy movie to find. It's not as easy as some of the other movies, and it's not as well known either. But it was kind of fun to hear Eric talk about some Russian history, get his point of view on it. So I'm glad we decided to review this movie. So yeah, we'll be back after the break. Catch you guys after the break. Yeah. Hi guys, we're at the break right now. So guys, you may not know, but I do another podcast, not just with our great guest Eric here, but I do another podcast called Insert Cast, and we have multiple guests on that podcast where I basically interview people in the audio industry. And we're always looking for new guests. So if you know someone in the audio industry who would like to be on a podcast, please let me know. That can be a sound engineer or a musician or a voice actor or even a voice acting director. Anyone who's in the audio industry, all I ask is that they maybe have some knowledge of the audio technology. Doesn't have to be a sound desk, but maybe even just an amp, sound equipment. And if they have Skype or Zoom or some sort of way that I can talk with them. If they're outside of New Zealand, preferably, something like Skype or something like that, because I can't necessarily always do phone interviews with some of those people. So, you can email me if you know someone at insertcast.co.nz. That's insertcast.co.nz. Let's get back to the podcast. We are back from the break, and let's get straight into the manga review. Eric, why don't you tell us about what I picked for us to read this week?
Well, you picked for us to read Liar Game, which is something I read a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Not sure why I stopped, but looking back at at least the first volume and the first several chapters, I really do like its concept, and it's so far it looks really good, and it is all about. And it is a type of manga that won't actually portray one trickster figure, but a lot of trickster figures. But I guess, would you like to would you like to say what a synopsis is, or would you like me to do it?
Well, we'll just get into one of the main themes of this, which is deceit. It's called the Liar Game because the main theme of this is, I guess I can sum this up. The main theme of this whole manga is that they play these games, and these games are games they're forced into, usually involving money, and they usually have to win by lying or manipulating their opponent. And our main character now is a very honest, kind, trusting college student whose father is sadly in the hospital with some type of cancer. And she's forced into this game. She gets a whole lot of money, and basically I thought this was kind of funny but mean. The card says, like, once you've opened the box, you've basically joined the Liar Game, which is funny because I think the actual note that says that is inside the box. So it's kind of like kind of a shitty thing to do. Now as this naive, trusting person, and she gets forced into this Liar Game where she gets a ton of money, and it says that another opponent will get a ton of money. This turns out to be an old teacher of hers, and within 30 days or something, they have to basically get the other person's money, and the person with both lots of money by the end of the game basically wins. And they can use any tactic they want. I think they could even kill the person if they wanted to, and the liar, they wouldn't be told off for it. And basically she's stuck in this horrible situation, and she goes to like a lawyer or something, an attorney, and he's not that helpful, but through his information she manages to find this former like scam artist, con artist sort of guy who's just been released from prison, Shinichi Akiyama, and she works with him to try and get through this game and many of the other games. So, Eric.
It definitely was a fun and interesting read the first time, and you kind of feel sorry for the main character now, who, it's good to have a quality of being good and honest, but in this kind of world, that is the worst. Actually, that is the worst thing to have. You know, it's good to be honest and all that, but if someone takes advantage of you because of that, you'll just get screwed over. And that's what even the first few chapters of this manga, it does point out that fact quite a lot. You know, you've got that one little story about mattresses that are quite expensive, but people are convinced that it's of a great bargain to buy, even though it's still expensive. Or getting calls from scammers who say, who try and scam you out of your money. It's a world we're already aware of, and it introduces, it still exists in this manga, and once that kind of clashes with Nao's, character, you kind of think, yeah, she's not going to live that long in this kind of world, I'm kind of surprised by this point she hasn't already been, in debt and used. But I guess no one's really realized completely how honest she is. But I guess but I haven't read too far into this. But I guess with the concept of the lie game, I would think this could actually be a good opportunity for her to realize, how to actually see and point out the liars, how to get out of scams, how to kind of, strategically move around to try and get as much money as you can and win. Especially with, I guess she's already realizing that, having already gone through that first bout of the lie game, where she's kind of had that whole, shocking moment.
There is a interesting moment in this manga where she actually uses her perception that people have of her as an advantage to actually trick some people, because they assume, she's this trusting, they know her from the previous games, and so she uses that version that people think of herself as a tool to trick these people, and I thought that was interesting. I think this manga is similar tonally to another manga, not in terms of its action, but in terms of what it wants to say about Japanese society, and that's Gantz. It isn't trying to show necessarily our show like our ignorance of violence and things like that's not necessarily the message here like Gantz. I think the message of this that's similar to Gantz is sort of that there can be really good people in this world, but there can also be some like really rotten people in this world, and naivete can be a problem, and it's commenting, I think, both of these on the trust and the over politeness of a lot of Japanese people that sometimes gets them into scams and other problems. I mean, the Yakuza, they're not as big as they were in the 90s and the 80s and stuff, but when they were at their biggest scope, they were mainly loan sharking and doing a lot of scams and things like that, and that's where I think a lot of the inspiration for mangas like Gantz and stuff like that comes from, a lot of seeing these sort of crimes where people are very naive and fall for these scams and these tricks and stuff that we see. That manga does put in that sort of issue in here. And even though not all the Japanese people would be that gullible to the point of taking it is an extreme level. It is a prevailing issue. It is a prevailing issue that exists, and it is something that a lot of people get taken advantage of. And I guess the lie game seems to be a test of sorts, or a kind of a social test of sorts. Put together a whole group of people, and see, who's actually willing to be a liar and who's willing to kind of, oust their fellow man for a bit of money. And seeing them use techniques, all well known and all warned by the government. It's kind of it's kind of easy to see how even the most common person you wouldn't expect to use these techniques still use them to get even a little bit of cash.
Because what is it? A few of the people here have somehow have managed to get anywhere from a few million yen to tens and even 100 million yen, from just participating in this game. And it's really interesting to see how the kind of techniques they used as well. But yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. What was I did go and read the ending to this manga, which I finally got onto. The ending, this manga gets a little bit convoluted, and I do think it goes on a little too long. That's one of the major cons. So this is sort of what I wanted to get into now. Let's get into some of the pros and cons, and that, as I said, is one. It is a little too long. The second arc of this manga is not that great. The first arc is really good and has a lot of interesting suspenseful moments that keep you on the edge of your seat, and there's a really funny and also interesting trick that they play on Nao's opponent, this former teacher. Spoilers in the in the first arc, and yeah, I also it's hard to find this manga as well, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to touch on this series. I've loved this manga for ages. I think I've recommended it to Eric probably more than once, and a number of my friends.
You have recommended to me way back in the college days.
Yeah.
I read a bit of it, but I kind of dropped it off for a while. So I can't remember everything that happened.
I will admit, it goes on a little bit long, it drags out, it does get a bit repetitive in a couple places. It does get, a little bit preachy in a couple, but generally I really like the first arc. If you can get through the second arc, the third and the other two arcs after that are really good. And it just has some really solid moments, and this manga sadly didn't get a release, an English release, because of the 2 live action series that are out. There's a Japanese live action TV show, and I believe there is a Korean live action TV show. Now, I have seen little bits of the Japanese one. It seems a little low budget and a little bit cheesy, but for the most part it seemed alright. But because of that, the license for Liar Game, I believe, got more expensive, and so it was actually a little too pricey to get the manga over here, which is a real shame, because the only release I've actually been able to find in New Zealand of this manga was a German release of it, not an English release of it, and I was almost tempted to buy it. Because, as I said, I do love this series. I do love this series a lot, and it's kind of pissed not to see that it's released, especially since I think if you're a fan of Death Note, this is a great manga to read right after Death Note or right after watching Death Note. It's got the same sort of suspense and tension that Death Note had. The art style isn't exactly similar, but it's kind of that sort of that sort of be shonen-y, sort of realistic-y sort of look. I think this is perfect if that's what you've just came from. If you just came from Death Note, Liar Game is the perfect thing to read right after. But sadly, if you want to read this, you're going to have to read it online through other means, because there's no English release of this, which also meant it also meant it didn't really get that popular. Didn't really get that popular in Japan either, I think, because it only got live actions, and there's no anime of this, and I think an anime of this would have been good too, would have boosted some of the popularity. So that's probably my biggest gripes with this manga.
Unfortunately, I haven't really read as much as you have. Probably only up to chapter 9.
Okay.
But so far, I do like the suspense of the whole series. Ignoring the fact that the main character is a bit of a crybaby, even with the inclusion of that, the whole setting, the whole kind of mind games and how people use lies to kind of gain advantage over one another to kind of obtain riches. It's pretty. I like it. It is pretty good, and it does reflect a lot of what people do in society, not just in kind of day-to-day situations like this, but in business as well. Businesses can be set as work with people lying to each other and to try and gain an advantage. So saying something like this is definitely something I enjoy. And it's something I want to continue to watch and see, and especially now that we're in, I guess, the second part of the game, of the lie game, and they want to see how that actually plays out.
So do you have any cons from what you're reading so far? Anything you didn't like?
Probably the main character so far, a bit of a crybaby. It's not something. Being completely honest, definitely isn't a I don't think it's a character trait that would be quite I guess a con. But that's a character trait that's created to just kind of offset the mood of the manga, or I guess the whole theme of the manga. I think the fact that she's quite an easy crybaby, cries a lot. I think that's the one con I have for her. I guess, as you mentioned, she does seem to take it, finally realize she could use this to her advantage, or, to try and win out some parts. So I would like to actually see that. But for now, looking at this, the main character is definitely the main con I have of the series.
What did you think of the art style? I really like some of the way the characters are drawn, especially Akiyama.
Oh, heck yeah. Art style looks good. It is simple in some sense, but at the same time, it does actually look good. Even with some of the backgrounds they created for the characters, to kind of showcase the situation, does hit home a bit about what's going on, and I do like it, and do like how it's actually done. And even though every other manga or anime has done that as well. For this one, I think it's even better, especially with how suspenseful some of the moments are in the manga.
So, what were your? Let's get to final thoughts then. What are your final thoughts on this manga, Eric?
Definitely gonna keep reading it just to see what happens next. And as you've mentioned, the main character now seems to be actually doing better in terms of how she can. In terms of how she can use her own honesty as an advantage to win. So I would definitely like to see that, and definitely would like to continue on with watching that.
So you can probably tell how much I like this by the fact that I'm holding back to spoil a ton of stuff that I want to talk about, including because I don't want to spoil this for Eric either. I just love this manga, and I think more people should read it. I will admit, yes, it does drag on. The ending is not great. There are some issues with the pacing in some of the later arcs, and especially in the second arc. But generally, I think this is a great story, and that first arc that you're going to read is really good. Like, it's just really solid, and I think both Now and Akiyama are somewhat likable characters. Yes, Now has like a lot of problems where she just cries all the time and is a bit whiny. That can be an issue in some places, but generally it's a pretty good manga. I'm really happy that I read it, and I'd love more people to read it, and god damn it would I love to see a fucking English release of this manga. I'd like to have a physical copy of this manga for myself to hold. Maybe when I go to Japan at another time, I will buy a volume of it in Japanese, just because I want a physical volume of this manga. I'd love it that much. So yeah, that's our final thoughts. Alright, Eric, are you falling asleep?
No.
Your eyes were shut.
No, I was just looking at something on my computer.
Okay. It looked like you look like that. I was like, fuck, I put Eric to sleep.
No, it's all good. I just kind of just kind of reading one of the chapters for Liar Game while you were talking. I guess hoping that the main character does grow a pair while you were speaking, and thinking, okay, so while he's talking about the main character possibly going from a crybaby to someone who's serious, I'm going to read and see if it happens at any point here.
Okay, so let's get into our Finish It segment. I didn't finish it this week, but Eric did finish it. So, Eric, tell us.
Well, I mean, not completely finish it, but I have gotten in a bit of progress to Night Raid 1931, which was part of the... Which I guess was part of the espionage type theme we had last week. Obviously, I can't brag about finishing Bloody Monday, even though I finished that dozens of times previously. But with Night Raid 1931, I have managed to get at least up to episode 5. And looking at it, I do like it. I've kind of had to skip one of the episodes since it had nothing to do with the theme of, the original theme we looked at. But the series still continues on with its I guess with its theme of espionage and international politics, and I guess it's like for example, and it even includes and it has included several more a couple more languages to listen to, which was great. It included Russian from a violinist, and German from, I guess, the German embassy set up in Shanghai. And it was so great to hear that and just listen to it. And it does hit home how espionage could not work without understanding that different countries and different languages are involved in as factors to, the whole thing of espionage. So I guess what kept me from watching any more was other things, but it's definitely something I will continue to look at in terms of espionage point of view for Night Raid. So maybe another time I'll finish it, but for now,
he's close to finishing it.
I'm close to finishing it, and once I do finish it, I will, brag about it and say, haha, I did it, I finished it.
So I watched episode 1 because I'd watched episode 0, so I wouldn't have watched episode 1. My thoughts, so Eric talked about the language. I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin, but I know friends who do, and I've watched a bunch of Hong Kong movies, so I'd like to think I've heard enough of the Cantonese language to sort of have a grasp on how it should sound. And I thought that the main guy who we see, I can't remember his name, the guy that's kind of the pretty boy of the group, the sort of young dude, he who has like some sort of telekinetic powers, that's what I guess.
Yes. I've kind of figured it out. At first I thought it had something to do with time, but as it turns out, it's
telekinesis, I think.
It's telekinesis. It's basic telekinesis, but the issue is that it kind of runs like a battery, There's only a certain amount he can use before he has to wait and recharge.
Yeah. So so this telekinetic kid, he's a cool powers, cool stuff. His Mandarin was a little bit off. That's the one thing I noticed. He seemed a little bit like when I was first learning, and I wouldn't say my Japanese is perfect or my language skills are perfect, but it seems a bit like someone who's learning a language for a first time, where it's very slow and the lines are delivered like, you're taking your time through. Like if I talk to Eric, if I go hajime mashite watashi wa kon, I go real fast. If I go hajime mashite watashi wa, if I'm really slowing it down, enunciating each set, that's what it felt like when I was hearing the sentences in Night Raid and the Mandarin from what I could hear. It didn't sound bad, but it just took me out a little bit. It sounded a little bit stilted in terms of the delivery. I didn't expect perfect, Mandarin, but I that's what I noticed. And I think if you are meant to be an undercover spy, it should sound just a little bit better, What was the Russian like? Just out of curiosity, what was the Russian like? Was it good? Did it sound like an actual speaker?
It wasn't perfect.
Okay.
It had almost the same problem as you've described when they were speaking Chinese, but I think it was much softer. So I think they were really struggling to kind of perfect proper Russian. So that's the only gripe I had about it. While I was happy to actually hear it, I had a gripe that it wasn't properly spoken. So I had a hard time even understanding what they were saying with it, and without subtitles. If I wanted to watch it without subtitles, I'd have a bit of trouble understanding what they were saying.
I think it's a thing of they probably got it phonetically, so they had it written out for them, but maybe someone didn't get across like the speed of it and like the I don't know if like it didn't sound like all the words were being mispronounced in Mandarin. It just sounded like they were maybe not said at the right speed. But there were a couple words here or there where the pronunciation was a little off. Was it more the pronunciation or like the tone or the speed with the Russian?
Like I said, the tone of it was rather soft spoken, but the speed of it was decent. The speed was I think decent in the way they spoke, but the fact that it was spoken quite softly and a little bit broken did kind of make me think that they would not have been the Russian spoken that wasn't that good.
So, did you watch episode 0? Did you go back and watch episode 0?
Yeah, that's the one thing I didn't actually do. I didn't actually watch episode 0. I really should be watching episode 0. But it's like, but why do some of these things have episode 0? I hardly ever watched episode 0 of any anime.
Would you recommend watching more of it? Like, because I want to know, I've only seen 2 episodes. Should I be watching more episodes of it? Is it repetitive? Is it like, does it drag out? Or is it like...
It's not exactly repetitive. And there does appear to be a story, creating it itself. So I think in terms of, I'd say give it another watch. I'd say don't pay too much attention to episode 4, but, continue on and just keep looking at it. It is, It is okay. It is an okay show. I like it personally. But to look at it from your point of view, I'd give it another go for a couple of episodes, only when they're the theme of espionage is involved. But otherwise, I'm going to keep watching it because I feel like there's going to be some great development. And the fact that this is set in pre-World War I China. Does make for a really interesting would make for an interesting historical period to look into. Ignoring the fact that people there apparently have superpowers.
All right, this has been episode 16 of Alternating with Eric. Catch you later.
Bye.